Electrocast.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or whatever movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up? And welcome to Or Whatever Movies. My name is Wesley, and today I'm joined by our resident theologian and iterative horror expert, my little sister.
Sister Iris.
Today, we are discussing a movie from 2024, A24's Heretic. So how you doing, Iris?
Heretic's kind of a bummer, dude.
Kind of a bummer, dude, in that it was disappointing, in that it was scary and it yucked your yum, or what?
Yucked my yum? Is that what the kids are saying these days?
It's what the kids are saying, and thus it is what Mr. Reed is saying, because he is with it.
It definitely yucked my yum. I have an icky feeling and have since I watched Heretic.
I asked if this was one that I could just blindly throw on for Kelly Ray. And you did a thinking about it emoji, and you said it's not gory, which was a lie.
How was that a lie? How exactly?
Dude, you didn't squirm. She lifted her butt off the couch when he started pawing at the vein in her arm.
Yes, there was veins and tendons that he had to move around in order to get that contraceptive device out, which I had to look up, by the way. It is indeed a contraceptive device and not some kind of SIM chip.
And it's obvious that Mr. Reed has his system in place, right? He has the PowerPoint from hell all staged and just ready for the Mormon kids to walk into his, crazy room or whatever.
He even had lighting down.
Yeah. Did he know? I mean, was he improvising? Was he just going with it when he saw the scar and knew that she had a birth control implant? And was that the story that he said was going to come to light, this secret that one of them had?
I think he has his own choose your own terror adventure in his mind that he plots out, just like
it's got twists and turns.
Right, and he's analyzing his options, and once he saw the scar, which I guess was the telltale sign, then yes, he went that direction with his horror adventure.
So he's giving them options, quite literally in the case of door A or door 1 or door 2, but were there other choices that they could have made that would have inspired, his sort of unrolling of his plan?
What I was curious about was, what if they decide to take out Mr. Reed? What if the sisters know that the jig is up and they full on attack him? Was he prepared for that possibility? And what would he have done?
My suspicion is that he had, along with everything else, various weapons staged around the house, probably. A letter opener was conveniently within eyeshot of them, on the floor or whatever it was.
Oh, that very ornate dagger-looking letter opener that she eventually used to stab him in the throat?
So that raises the specter of this idea that the movie is meant to be deep, really deep, but maybe the only true deep is how deep his basement went. Under this weird suburban house, which apparently is in Colorado.
It was barbarian deep.
Yeah, I think that was by design. But he had to, you have to design those kind of things. And you always wonder about the Breaking Bad sub-laundry meth basement. You wonder about Barbarian. Actually, that maybe could have been carved by hand, Andy Dufresne style, over decades or whatever. But somebody had to build Mr. Reed's underground crazy basement, right? And did he then kill the contractor or something to be like, hey, I know this one dude had the weirdest thing under his house and I helped build it.
This is my question.
He didn't do that by hand.
This is my question. Was Buffalo Bill also hiring contractors to build his underground realm where he kept his victims?
He had a well down there.
Right, exactly.
It must be that was an old, spoiler, it must be that was an old house from 100 years ago, the foundation of which is built on an existing foundation or something where people had in-house wells.
You got the weird underground structure, and I'm not sure why we're questioning it specifically for Heretic, but I was definitely wondering the same thing. So the 2 doors lead to the same place, the basement, and then there's a sub-basement where he has all of his captives, who I assume are all Mormon sisters?
Well, he had, is it Munchausen syndrome to them?
You always say this.
Where you fall in love with your captor.
Yeah, Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm, thank you. And they seem to do his bidding, and if not, he would cut off a thumb or whatever.
I don't think that they love him. I think that they fear him, and they're cold. They're really cold.
Enough to play act? Like go through all the lines and even improv?
Well, I think the one who ate the poison pie was like, yeah, I'm done. I want out of this horror prison hellhole of a life that I've been living down here. And then the other one probably gets some kind of reward for doing the rising from the dead act.
So this discussion obviously benefits from having seen the movie, come out on the other side for better or worse, and discussing it. But the unfolding of this movie is something that needs to be recognized. You already mentioned Barbarian, and there was something to this linear style, no tricks. In fact, like Barbarian, we go through the whole half of the movie before we see Brother Kennedy, before we randomly cut to the outside. And by that point, we're so invested in this linear struggle and tense exchange, like I was pulled out of it in a weird way. I was like, wait, now we're going someplace else? What? Because we had been so firmly established in this structure. Like they talk about going to the house, then they go to the house, and he leads them from one room to the next, and they go down into the basement, and the story never goes back on itself. It's referential, but only in things that happened a few minutes before. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, the horror is in their isolation, and the psychological thriller is heightened because of how isolated they are. Even when they call the church, or they pretend to call the church, you feel their isolation. And so revealing that Topher Grace is real and kind of standing by and looking out for them relieves all of that tension that's built up in their isolation. Is that what you're getting at?
But just more this idea that it's not flashy, it's sequential. There's no, how did they get down to the basement? Or we don't start in the basement. It's not really a cold open. We're just sort of in it, and the movie progresses in a very clearly linear fashion.
Sure, we're along for the ride. So a lot of these movies have to take a lot of time to set up getting our victims into the trap. And that's something that Heretic does really quickly and elegantly because of the nature of the story. It's 2 Mormon missionaries who are very innocent and going there for a very specific reason, to talk to a man who's interested in discussing their faith. So it gets us into the story really quickly. We don't have to make any excuses for why they're there. It's very plausible that they would be, which I think really accelerates us getting into this, basically getting onto the ride. And then we're on it once we're inside the house and the automatic door deadbolt locks behind us.
A lot of stuff already in place, just waiting for the fly to enter the parlor. And he volunteers, there's metal in the walls and the ceiling. Is that cool? And they're like, doesn't bother us. That's fine. Why would he say that? He didn't need to volunteer that, because I think he said it before the door was closed. And at first I wondered, did he say it only because that's the only way? There's like, what kind of natural exposition would allow for that? Because eventually we're going to come down to they're going to try to call. And then from the next room, he could be like, I know what you're doing. And by the way, there's metal and you're not going to get any reception. Sorry. So why would he give that information, do you think? For the purposes of constructing Heretic carefully, as I think the writer, director, producers do.
Everything about the Hugh Grant character, the Mr. Reed character, is about intentionality. And he's intentionally, in those first moments, doing everything he can to establish trust. As false as it may be, giving that bit of information is like his attempt at being forthright with them. That way later he can say, I told you, there's metal in the walls. It's a quirk of the house, just like the automatic timer for the lights. And you agreed that it was fine moments after you stepped in. So it's part of his manipulation, just like the blueberry candle.
Yeah, that makes sense. So he's parsing out information in order to distract from the fact that he's not giving the big piece.
Yeah, he's not going so far as to say, and that means your phones will not work in my house. He's saying what he needs to do to be able to refer to it later. I told you. And I feel like the candle piece was very telling because there was a blueberry pie in the oven. Unless she brought down a store-bought pie that was laced and started eating it. But he intentionally puts the candle out there in order to tip them off. It's part of his intentional doling out of information, but that piece of information is intended to scare them and to start to turn them on to his ruse because I think he's sadistic and enjoys it.
Yeah, it's not like he didn't know. He knew that they figured out the candle thing.
Right.
And thus he put it there for them to discover because he relished in their sort of slow understanding of the predicament that they were in.
Right.
And that brings the fear, and the fear brings him into the position that he really wants, which is power, the mysterious deity figure, the god of his house.
Exactly. Wasn't he literally taking notes like at 7:01 candle reveal and, 7:11 visible struggle? Like,
yeah. The only one that I got in that brief glimpse of his notes was 9:00, prophet pie.
It sounds so jolly when you say it like that.
Oh, man. He was jolly consistently. People are calling this one of the best performances, if not the best, of Hugh Grant's career. And definitely, outside of the type he typically plays, he's really going for this counter-programming kind of, he's playing against his image. Yeah, against type as his romantic leading man from decades prior. But I've come up with a word for Hugh Grant, which encompasses even this role, which is weird and strangely not menacing. And the word for Hugh Grant that I've come up with is just delicious. Like, he's having so much fun being just Hugh Grant and smiley and awkward and poorly singing, Radiohead. He's trying to illustrate a point. And he sings Creep so poorly and so Hugh Grantly that I wonder if they got it. He's like, you heard that song. Surely you've heard that. I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo. And I don't think they got it. But there's nothing. He never snarls. I don't think there's anything menacing, even when he's bleeding out and crawling on her and attempting to slit her throat and everything. It's so strange. And I think it was effective, but I can't exactly put my finger on why, because he wasn't scary, and yet he was.
This makes me think of the moment where he's literally sitting back, smugly, watching them decide what door to pick, like, your choice. And he's kind of...
He's like got his arms folded. He's standing a respectful distance. You remember I told you that kind of my MO as a big dude in the world where I know that people could be afraid of me is to stay away from people, is to offset my balance, put my hands in front of me and cross them, or hold my phone, not look at them, cross the street in anticipation of them being scared to walk past me on a dark street, stuff like that.
As men should do to put women at ease, yes.
He did all that stuff. He stayed a respectful distance far away. I don't think he ever touched them, even in the smallest measure. He always was polite and just giving them their space because he knew that they had no place to go. And that was strangely effective as not the typical menacing bad guy, the torturer. You know what I mean?
Oh, he had gobs and gobs of patience. And I think this is the kind of bad guy monster who has the luxury of being able to sit back and play it cool. It's like Hannibal Lecter. He's got it all figured out. So what does he have to fret about? They're already in the trap of his fun house. They're moving through the labyrinth, and now he gets to sit back and just watch it happen.
If they're wrapped in the spider's thread, right? Spider's got his leg on the line or whatever, so he can hear it struggling, and you struggle until you're tired, and then you're much less effort for the spider to swoop in and administer the poison or whatever.
So obviously this is a psychological religious thriller, and it's got horror elements, I guess gore, that I overlooked in recommending that Kelly Ray watch this. But is it a horror movie? To me, I'll answer my own question. Horror is kind of beside the point. Like, it's a little bit of a vehicle for this religious debate or argument that Hugh Grant's character, Mr. Reed, wants to have and wants to use in order to direct his own choose-your-own horror adventure in his funhouse of horrors.
Is it a horror movie is your question. I think definitely it is, but I think it wants to be, it's more of an exercise in power on his part. And I could tell that Kelly Ray was uncomfortable because there is a dude who, just by sheer force of being a dude, is imprisoning and subjugating these two female characters who are together for purposes of safety. You know, the Mormons are never allowed to enter a home on their own. They want a woman present and believed there was one. The elder Kennedy, I guess he was allowed to go out on his own, but otherwise they always team up for this very reason. And yet I think if they had both come at him, he still would have been able to overpower them.
Although I think Sophie Thatcher would make a pretty badass fly. Like, I think she'd fight back and at least do some damage. They both did before the end.
Well, that was the board with the nails. And if you introduce the board with the nails in Act 2 or whatever, then you have to use the board with the nails.
Uh-oh. The last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
It's time for basketball, and Uber Eats is dropping deals on game day favorites to keep you locked in on the action. Like when you're craving a buzzer beater, but also buffalo wings. Or when an upset makes you want to ugly cry into a pizza. And right now, Uber Eats has game day deals from McDonald's, Popeyes, Pizza Hut, Wendy's, and hundreds more local favorites. So you can keep your eyes on the ball and your hands on a hamburger. Order now, only on Uber Eats. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
Because that was the only thing that would have been left unused. Like, oh, he's for future generations of Mormons. He's still got that board with the nail in it leaning behind the post.
Yeah, she pulled that out in her attempt to escape, and then she had the common sense, the good sense to put it behind the pole as a standby weapon for when she might need it.
Yeah.
So Sister Paxson letter cuts him in the neck, and then Sophie Thatcher finishes the job with the board with the nails. So, you know.
But that wasn't part of the plan. She had been dead for a half an hour at that point.
Yeah, so what's up with that? Was that supposed to be some kind of commentary on rising from the dead?
Yes, absolutely. Horror trope. We came to expect it or whatever. Not to necessarily say that I saw it coming. Because the problem with Heretic, I think, is I was ahead of it more than I wanted to be. And typically I let it unfold. So I'm thrilled when the long dead heroine, who is typically the bad guy, right, who is long dead and then comes back for one last scare, she jumps up and nails him in the head, even though she was pretty well dead. And so I didn't want to be ahead of it. Too many things I got, and I think that's because of my unique position. While you are the resident theologian and iterative horror expert, I watch a lot of movies and saw a lot of the influences on this movie, and so I knew, unfortunately, that certain things were going to happen, and I'm not sure that made for a more enjoyable experience.
The filmmakers want us to pretend or to not fully know for a good half hour here when he's playing a little bit of cat and mouse in the parlor. But we know what's going down. I knew that Hugh Grant was the bad guy because that's the buzz around Heretic. And so that really muddied things for me. I had a really hard time deciding when my nope moment was, where I say nope, and I, as one of the characters in the movie, would turn and walk away. I think I would have been like, excuse me, Mr. Reed, something that Sister Paxson was incapable of doing, being direct, I would have said, I'm really uncomfortable and I want to leave now. And maybe that would have just simply accelerated his plan, but I think that I would have expressed my direct concern much sooner than these ladies.
So there's a couple of layers to these ladies. They both turned and became resourceful and intelligent and kind of, forgive me, normal people, normal girls who are smart and understand the peril of their situation. So there's the pleasantry, there's the mask of, would you like to hear about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? You know, and smiling and all formal. And then there's assessing their position, but still trying to maintain this formality that I found confusing. They never got, even when they knew that they were in trouble, it was like, but maybe you could unlock the front door, please? And we can go out that way instead of going out the back where we would be confused and turned around when we got outside. At that point, they knew it. Don't make a secret of the letter opener that he knows they're going to spy. At least I think so. Get together, grab a thing, and go for it is your best shot. Before you get too deep into the house, before you cross another threshold of another iron-reinforced door. They wouldn't drop it until the very last second when there was no choice.
Never go to the second location, ladies. That's the first rule of self-defense.
Yeah, that's kidnapping, right?
Yeah, if you're abducted, you have to do everything you can before you are moved to the second location, because the second location is always more controlled. And that was definitely the case in his irreligious chapel or whatever he had constructed back there.
But I think once they were over the threshold in this case, they were kind of stuck. So let me ask you this. To you, was Hugh Grant the only sweater-wearing, glasses-wearing threat in the movie? Did you not expect someone else, the wizard behind the curtain, pulling the strings and locking the doors behind them?
I'm surprised he didn't grasp at her ankles as she climbed out of that bathroom window, that grated window, whatever that was.
Yeah, the only window I think that could have allowed for her size to get through.
I think so, yeah, because all the other ones were these high, like keyhole type windows or these long, skinny ones. What I was really expecting, though, was that somehow he would mobilize his demon army of all of the Mormon sisters that he had turned through his abuse and mind control and indoctrination, that they would rise like a zombie army and take out the girls. I thought that was the finale that we were barreling toward.
I literally said that. I said, uh-oh, here comes the barbarian. and I was like, now they're in real trouble because they're in the barbarian blade basement. And I was like, wait, and she actually has a pie? What is happening?
But also I was surprised that in the end, Sister Paxton did not go back and kind of release all those captives. Like, she was so compassionate toward them. I thought she would have had a mind to go back and unlock them, and that would have been the moment where they would have overtaken her in like the ultimate horror and terror. Instead, she gets out, and in a very Inception-y kind of way, she sees the butterfly, or doesn't she?
Schrodinger's butterfly. It's all up to you. I got that there was the butterfly, and that tied into what he said earlier, and then it was gone. What does it mean? I don't care. By that point, I was on a different track.
I thought that the butterfly was Sister Barnes. Remember in the beginning she says, if I die, I'm coming back as a butterfly, and I'm going to land where people can see me and know that it's me, sending them a message. Remember that?
Yes, but then she disappeared, or did she fly away?
Was she imagining her, that Sister Barnes was saying, it's okay, I'm okay?
I thought that she had the butterfly, looked down, and there was no butterfly. Am I wrong?
That's what it appeared, which suggested and signaled to me that she was imagining the butterfly. And therefore kind of imagining her own freedom. Like, I really wonder if she ever got out.
Is it a question that needs to be answered?
Does it make or break Heretic? No.
Is it necessary that the final girl live or die?
Every horror movie has like its conspiracy theorists, but didn't you say that so-and-so doesn't survive the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Yeah, and that's all tropey stuff, and that's why I want to use the remaining time we have in this episode on Heretic to discuss the influences and tropes and how I think I'm going to argue they inform the story and round it out.
Maybe it's like speaking in tongues, which is appropriate because we're talking about religion here. If there's no interpreter, if you don't know what it means, then it doesn't add value to the conversation. So I can see what you're saying in that it doesn't really matter if Sister Paxton survives or if Sister Paxton saw Sister Barnes in the butterfly and yada yada.
Was that speaking in tongues?
The yada yada part?
Yeah. So I've seen people speak in tongues.
Really?
But what if it's not a matter of translation? What if it doesn't mean anything? You look at it and you think, that looks like religious epilepsy to me. I'm afraid that people are going into Heretic saying, this challenged me theologically. It really opened my eyes because I had no idea that religion was iterative in this respect. I had no idea that the murderer, how deep is it that the murderer made such a profound case against the faith that kept these girls moral and proper and supposedly all that stuff. This movie was deep, bruh. If you're in my position, that's not the case. It's a little bit like people idealizing Joaquin Phoenix's Joker or Christian Bale's American Psycho, thinking that's the ideal, and the filmmakers are like, see, that wasn't the intention. The whole idea is that he was a bad person. It didn't matter to me whether or not he was right about religions and all his examples, and thus his point in getting it across didn't really matter to me. It felt like just toying with them for his sadistic satisfaction.
Definitely. Like, a lot of it was manufactured narrative in order to prove his point. I'm really not an expert, but it was clear that he twisted facts, just like the birth control thing, to introduce sim theory or whatever it was that he was trying to introduce at that point, just to complete the picture of his manipulation.
Yeah, and isn't that the hallmark of these manifestos and the crazy person in horror movies who expounds and has notebooks full of information and you feel is deep, or mostly he, less she's in the serial killer realm, are profound and are really not, which made this movie, for the purposes of deepness and horror and sort of unsettling your deeply held beliefs, a little like Seven, which we discussed. John Doe firmly believed that what he was doing was going to be studied and discussed and mulled over by historians and students forever. You know what I mean? When really he was just convincing someone to carry out the two sins that he didn't carry out to complete the sins. Look how fallible we all are. Heretic, in the same way, he was in the position of power and they weren't, and he watched them squirm. And he wanted to undo all their stuff, but what does it matter if he convinces them? Were they going to go out and spread the anti-gospel? No, they were going to die. And that's really all he wanted. And it brought up this idea that what is horror that we discussed before. And I think the strength of Heretic is iterative horror. It's recycled elements, and not just like, well, yeah, everybody borrows from everybody, and sure, this movie had influences, because lots of them do. But I think it was intentionally and deliberately staged this way for us, or at least for me. When he played The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies, did you immediately know what he was getting at?
The Radiohead lawsuit? No.
Yeah, I didn't understand what his argument was, but I was like, oh, I hear it.
And because you read the McMillions book, you also knew the backstory to Monopoly.
So I knew all that stuff, so it wasn't revelatory, and it didn't shake my tree. What I'm interested in are the clues that this movie sets up. And it's not like, oh, that helps me understand or anticipate or unravel the puzzle. It was more that this movie was clearly drawing from other movies in an iterative way. Nosferatu does not exist without Dracula. That's a given, right?
Yep.
Did you note at the end, the knocking on heaven's door, Bob Dylan? We just talked about Bob Dylan in A Complete Unknown. Did you recognize knocking on heaven's door for what it was during the end credits?
Is that a Sophie Thatcher reference?
It is a Sophie Thatcher reference, which is very interesting. But the second I heard it, I was like, oh, that's Fade Into You by Mazzy Star. And I understood. And I feel like I got and understood so much else. Did you not see the belief written on the door and disbelief? Was belief not the new red rum from The Shining?
What does it spell backwards?
Nothing. It was just he wrote it on the door. You're saying, oh, that's kind of thin.
Yes.
But then we already talked about how close this was to Barbarian. How the people under the stairs were the subjects or the faithful how Neibolt House was that basement. The weird thing where he had leaks all over in this fortified house, and the leak was powering that little bamboo thing that was such a source of tension in Kill Bill. You remember that thing during the Oren Ishii, the bride fight?
Yeah. Fairly easy stuff to confirm. Have the filmmakers talked about their inspiration or their intentions around Heretic?
They cited some influences, specifically the underground bar scene in Inglourious Bastards, where, everyone's smiling and talking, but things are happening under the surface of the dialogue and under the table.
Are you saying that religion was just a front for the filmmakers' Beck & Woods horror movie funhouse?
I think that was his arguments were a little bit hollow because he was just trapping them, and he could have trapped anybody. An Amazon delivery person that came to the door and, won't you step in for just a moment out of the rain? Hey, it's just me and my wife and I have this hot blueberry pie. You should really take some. Oh, that would be cool, because I was more fascinated by other things. I was fascinated by the visual clues and how closely tied this is to other horror movies. Sophie Thatcher, the star of The Boogeyman and of Yellow Jackets, and the model that they used a couple of times to really good effect felt like the model use in Hereditary. Also an A24 movie. A24 known for this somewhat cerebral level of horror that doesn't rely on gore or jump scares necessarily. I don't think there was a jump scare in this entire movie. That's not true. Kelly jumped at the spider in the little pipe.
And that made me jump. And the first time that the timer went off made me jump.
There was very little mystery to Mr. Reed. Get it? I came out of it energized and not bummed, and it moved the needle just enough to be remembered. And for that, I'm thankful.
And for that, you give it an?
I'm looking forward to seeing it again, and that has power, the ability to make me go back. And for that reason, definitely a super powered all right, but shy of totally because I'm not sure yet. I don't have a full grasp on this movie.
That does say a lot, that you'd return to Heretic. I said at the very top that I was bummed, and I think it's because I left it feeling hollow, not because the film itself lacked substance, but because I felt the futility of Sister Paxton's future. Like, obviously she's going to be dealing with a lot of trauma if she survived, but also, did he obliterate her faith? Did he fortify her faith? Is that kind of beside the point? Was it all kind of meaningless? Did it feel just like bleak, meaningless menace and evil in the world? Maybe that was the feeling that I came away with, and that's not necessarily commentary on Heretic, which itself, as a film, to bring up interesting questions, I think, is good. And that's our discussion on A24's Heretic, a movie from 2024. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know by calling or texting us 818-835-0473, emailing us, or whatevermovies@gmail.com, or whatevermovies.com, or wherever you get podcasts. And happy 2025.
For those of you who dream of a world where music and podcasts live together in perfect harmony, now, for the first time, Electricast gives you a magical compilation, Pod Till You Drop, Volume 1, where we give you the best in tunes and the best in podcasts. Feast your ears and hear the culture. Available now wherever you listen to music.
Hi, I'm Sherilyn Fenn from Twin Peaks. What did you do on your last Saturday night?
Did you hear something?
Toilet paper.
There's nada. The reserves have gone dry. People are hoarding it. I should have done that.
They're all out of hand sanitizer at my Target.
Mark, when did you last watch the news?
We are getting reports of forced quarantines in China, Japan, and now Italy.
You're cutting onions in half and putting them around your apartment.
Yes, exactly. It kills the COVID.
Excuse me? Let's go. Get in.
Vamos, rápido.
Have you ever driven one of these?
Never.
I'll drive, ladies.
I've got the keys.
Excuse me, I'm lost. I'm looking for my wife. I got turned around.
Join me, Eric Roberts, Jennifer Elise Cox, and Ed Asner for The Last Saturday Night, an Electricast podcast. You'll love it. Electricast.
Electricast.